Welcome to the Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture Series. At the end of each slide, there will be a 5-second delay. Use this time to complete your notes. When you are done, push play and move on to the next slide. This presentation will begin in 5 seconds. Welcome to Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture 3.3 on campaigning and campaign contributions, and it's time to talk about these guys again, our founding fathers. They created a government by and for the people. What? What's that you say? Not everybody buys that? Oh yeah, there's this guy, Thomas Paine. He's the person who said, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. I can already hear Thomas Jefferson saying, our government is not a necessary evil, and his friend James Madison saying, our government is designed to help us pursue life, liberty, and prosperity. Well, if that's the case, why do we see memes like this? And above all, Harry, never trust politicians. If we designed a government like this, why do so many people still feel like this? Well, perhaps it has to do with this. Show me the money. So today, we're going to look at campaigns and campaign contributions, and we're going to see how they impact the way people look at the American political system. With that said, go to the next slide. You learn that political parties are here for one reason, and that's to get their person elected to office. But that means that we, the voter, have to do a bit more work when we're listening to them. We have to figure out if those political parties and our candidates are giving us facts to sway us in their direction, or if they're giving us biased information simply to get our vote. So we're going to look at their speeches, literature, and advertisements to see if we are being provided the facts or if we're being provided biased information. There are 4 strategies for evaluating campaign speeches, literature, and advertisements for accuracy. First, separate the facts, the true statements, from opinion. What is the speaker putting forth as true based on his or her position? Check out this tweet. Yep, that's a United States Senator standing on the floor of the U.S. Senate with a snowball, arguing that since it snowed, there's no global warming. The statement in reply, you can believe science, or you can believe the senator with the snowball. Do you believe the facts as put forth by the scientific community, or do you believe the opinion of the United States Senator holding the snowball saying that since it snowed, there's no global warming? Second, detect bias in the outlet reporting the statement. The outlet being the media, the news station, the newspaper, the radio station, or the internet source. And we need to do 2 things in order to figure this out. We need to determine the focus of the outlet. Are they reporting on an election because it's newsworthy, or are they merely making political statements about the election? And then we need to determine when coverage of a political news event goes from being unbiased to being biased for or against a candidate. Here's the thing. You could look at any news program and decide it's biased. There is always a point on almost every news station where the news people are going to give their opinion about what they are seeing. That is their job, not just to tell you what the news is, but they are trying to interpret it. The question is this: are they giving both sides time to make their point? If you're watching a news station and we break away from coverage of the election and we have a panel of Republicans and Democrats and they're all talking, that is not a biased news source. If we're watching the election and we break away to a panel of just one political party saying whatever they want to say, that's probably biased. Go to the next slide. We need to take 2 more steps in order to determine whether a political party is presenting us with the facts or with biased information. Citizens should evaluate who is providing politically focused information to them. Here we go. Are you viewing a mainstream news outlet, the mainstream media, or a politically targeted talk show? What does this really look like? This is the mainstream media. Everybody from MSNBC to Fox and everyone in between. None of these stations falls right on the exact middle of the political spectrum. But when these stations report what they are seeing, they report the newsworthy events, and then if they are going to provide analysis or opinion, they're going to give both sides of the political spectrum an opportunity to talk. If you're listening to Sirius XM, there's a good chance you're listening to somebody's radio show. They have one side, they only care about their side, and they're not going to ask for your opinion when it comes to the other side. Their political party is right, your political party is wrong. End of story. But it doesn't just happen with the media. If you're taking a survey, is the survey meant to actually take a poll or to try to sway you to vote for a candidate? I've taken political surveys where they're just trying to figure out where I fall on the political spectrum. They're taking the pulse of the voters. But I've also taken political surveys where it becomes pretty obvious that the point of the survey is to sway me to vote for the political candidate that is supporting the survey. Finally, citizens should also identify if propaganda is being presented to them. What is propaganda? Propaganda is an idea or statement that is often false or exaggerated. We call that misleading, and is spread in order to help a political cause, a political leader, or a government. For example, you'll vote as you're told. There's a war on. You need to vote for us because if you don't vote for us, we're in charge, there's a war, and your vote is like unpatriotic. That's propaganda. Political propaganda is generated by a variety of sources, including campaigns, political action committees or PACs, you're going to learn about them, business interest groups, and political groups. There's a lot of propaganda, false and misleading information out there, and your job as the voter is to determine what are the facts and what is biased information. Go to the next slide. Not only do voters have to separate facts from bias or opinion when deciding who to vote for, they must also accept a simple truth. There is a problem with rising campaign costs. Campaigning requires candidates to conduct fundraising, like calling donors, attending events, meetings with PACs, and other chores. We call that campaign finance. And unless you are self-funded, unless you are paying for all of this campaigning on your own, you're going to have to do some fundraising. And no matter how rich you are, if you get to the higher levels of government, you're running for things like president, you're probably still going to need some money in addition to what you have on your own. Because of this, campaign costs limit the opportunity for citizens to run for public office, and it costs significantly more to run for federal office than state or local office. What do I mean? You're going to need some money to run for Congress. You're going to need a lot more money to run for president, and it's going to take a tremendous amount of money to run in those federal elections versus whether or not I'm running for my local council seat. How much money? The least wealthy candidate running for president in 2016, and there were a lot of people running, was still worth over $300,000. And the person who won that presidency, Donald Trump, self-funded his campaign, and he is a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire. So, campaign costs give wealthy candidates an advantage during elections. Then we have to deal with PACs. No, not that PAC. We have to deal with political action committees or PACs. These are non-profit entities that use political contributions made to them to make their own political contributions and to fund other election-related activities to further their political positions. What does all that mean? These are actually companies. They're not here to make a profit, but they're here to support a political position. They don't represent a political candidate. They don't represent a political candidate, but they raise money on behalf of the position that they believe in, and then they will give that money to a political candidate or support that candidate in other ways, like television commercials. Go to the next slide. Many people realize the problem with too much money in the political campaign system, so we've had campaign finance reform. Rising campaign costs have led to campaign finance reform, including the creation of the Federal Election Commission. This is an agency charged with making sure that money is being spent the right way and going to the right places in political campaigns. And passage of the McCain Feingold Act. Senators McCain and Feingold believed that there was too much money in the political campaign system, so they said we need limits on how much people can spend. Limits have been placed on the amount individuals may contribute to political candidates and campaigns. You don't have to write all these down, but it's good to see what those limits are. $2,700 per election to a federal candidate or committee, $5,000 per calendar year to a political action committee, $10,000 per calendar year to a state or local party committee, $33,400 per calendar year to a national party committee, and $100 in currency or cold hard cash to any political committee. In other words, we the people want to be able to play the game as well, and according to Senators McCain and Feingold, limiting the amount somebody can give to a political campaign in this way allows more Americans to make a bigger impact economically on their political campaigns. Sounds fantastic, right? Well, after all of this, the Supreme Court came in with a case called Citizens United versus FEC, and they said that the First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting independent political expenditures or payments by a non-profit corporation like a political action committee. And then they extended that ruling to include for-profit corporations, labor unions, and other associations. In other words, I, the individual voter, am limited into how much money I can give to a particular place, but political action committees can spend as much money as they want so long as it is an independent political expenditure, so long as it is not supporting a particular candidate. There has been a major backlash to this ruling. A lot of people have been wondering, is it now we the corporations instead of we the people? That's it for this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in class.